Hello, once again we're back with our Love Begins With Me film documentary project, and I'm very happy to introduce Evan Hirsch, our friend who's here to kind of share his story about love and how he's come to understand love and how love has become a transformative, critical focal point of his own life. So welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
So, as a fellow love adventurer, journeyman, how did you get to come to understand about love and that change and that transformation? How has this come into your life, and what has it done, and how is it making you a different person?
Good question. I'm very fortunate in that I've had exposure to passion for life, zest for life, my mother's passionate curiosity for people and culture and the wonderful things that we have developed on this planet, and all of the natural beauty complemented by the beauty that we've created to go along with it. And having been a witness to that through my formative years and seeing her passion and curiosity and the variety is the spice of life, if it's one of the most valuable things I've learned from my mother along the way, it was that. It was that there's a world full of beauty out there, and it's up to me as an individual to seek that out, to follow it, and to embrace it in my life. And I'm just an example of one guy who's taken that to the extreme. And I realize there are gazillions of things happening in the world, or gazillions of bits of information out there, but the bottom line is, what are we focusing on? What are we paying attention to? In the fifth agreement, the Ruiz father and son talk about the attention being that place where everything enters the brain and comes out of the brain, what I call reception and transmission. And so where do we focus our attention becomes the underlying question to everything. Even if it's with one person, am I paying attention to the negative things you are putting out or the positive? And I'm paying attention to everything that crosses my radar, but I'm making that choice internally to process things depending on where I find the benefit, where I find the inspiration, and where I find things that I value, that I feel can be useful towards pursuing my path in life, whatever that is at that time. And again, I just feel very, very fortunate that I was raised in the way I was and exposed to the things I was, and that somehow by some miracle, whatever you want to call it, I sort of caught the bug, and then I follow this path. And there's plenty of negative information out there and negativity to which we could respond and on which we could focus, and not to be Pollyanna about it, and not to disregard and dismiss all bad news and everything. I don't know. I just have developed sort of a muscle for that positivity, where I give more weight to things that are on the more positive side of things. I read the negative, I read the headlines. Let's just say I'm aware of them, I check the headlines, but on the other hand, if I'm going to really dig deeper and read more into something, it's going to be something that inspired me rather than something that repelled me or repulsed me. And I think it's easy to get into that trap of getting sucked into the, if it bleeds, it leads. And for me, if it bleeds, I leave.
Right, sure.
How about that? That's a new one for you.
So you had, your mother was obviously a very profound influence, and she embodied and drew your attention to the fact that there's beauty and there's wonderment on this beautiful planet, and that we can actually pay attention and notice those types of things. So as an example, she certainly was there and pointed you in the right direction. Were you always immediately aware of that perspective, or is it something that has evolved over time? Or if you had your own trials and tribulations along the way where you didn't always see that beautiful earth that you're living on, is there an evolution in yourself where you not only embodied the perspective change that your mother, for example, shared with you, but that you learn to embody your own version of that, somewhat in contrast to, the word that comes to mind is, the negative and the positive. We could also call it the fear and the love. We could look at these aspects with different kinds of labels, but we want to make sure that our audience understands that yes, you've had this beautiful inspiration. Relatably, though, we all have our own challenges along the way. So I'm going to assume that you've had some challenges too that have helped create your own understanding of this legacy that your mother has bestowed to you.
Wonderful segue, because I was already thinking of sharing just the brief, basic, fundamental history of it, and that is that I come from a broken family. My father left the home when I was 4 years old. Now,
and yet your mother still had the ability to hold beauty even in a scenario that's really quite awesome.
Absolutely. And I may have spent a good portion of my life regretting that, resenting him for that, etc. But ultimately I came around to recognizing that what is, whatever happened was obviously meant to be because it did happen, and that whatever is in my history is exactly what led me to where I am right now. And I've felt for many years where I am right now, wherever that was, in the now moments of that history, was a wonderful place to be, and that I was very content at being there and comfortable in my own skin. And this has just evolved more and more and more and more. There was a time in high school, I was an angry punk, and we all thought that nuclear war was going to happen, and we always said World War IV was going to be fought with sticks and stones, because World War III was going to be the devastation of everything that we've created. And there's a time and place for that. Obviously that needed to happen to get me to where I arrived at this moment, which is still ever evolving. And it's in very recent years that I have really harnessed this positivity, this recognition of the love, this embracing of the negative, this embracing of the totality of my history, including a father leaving and a mother's grieving over that, and my helplessness to help her heal, and my struggles even with her to get along and find our way and find our places with each other as a family who was so disrupted. The middle brother going off with the father and stepmother, the older brother going off to college across the country when I was still quite young, 7 years old, and then being raised alone with a single mother at that point. And it sounds so funny to say it this way, but I'm grateful for all of those things happening. As bad as we think of divorce as being, and as lonely as it is generally perceived to be, not in a loving relationship, as my mother had never really found that one after that. And which is a side note, but interesting, in talking with my father about this years later, he says he always thought that she'd be married. He always just figured she'd be married, that she'd land on her feet, and she never really did. That was one element that was really a void and missing in her life. And yet, here I am today, a living testament to the power of perseverance, the power of love itself, and the power of our minds to adjust and adapt. And the way I describe it is this connection between our heart and our mind, that our hearts are pure love. Obviously, it's in there. We know love for someone, for something, for some music, for some animal, whatever it may be, for nature, or for technology or things we've created, anything, a love for pizza. It doesn't matter. It's that connection with the heart when we're saying, ooh, yeah. And we all know that feeling, no matter how angry we are or how negative we may be. And so the way I look at it is there's this cloud of fear that disrupts that connection and becomes an impediment to us getting back to basics, what's in our heart, and being attuned to it and inspired by it and basking in the glow of it. And I've just developed a really powerful skill for just blowing away that cloud of fear. It happens. I feel it. I'm not Pollyanna, panacea, everything's just going to be fine, just think positive at all. I'm a sensitive person, and I'm no stranger to those feelings, and I'm not immune to them. However, I recognize them for what they are. I call a spade a spade. I take what I call an emotional pulse, and I recognize, ooh, that frustrated me, or that repulsed me. And yet, okay, that was frustration and repulsion. That's not me. What's in my heart? Love, pure love, unconditional love. However, so many of us aren't aware of that, haven't developed, again, that muscle, that skill for seeing through it, for blowing it away. And one of the real tricks that I've found that I love is applying the intellect. It's like intellect over emotion. And that I recognize what that was, and I think, well, wait, why was it there? What can I learn from it? How can I rise above it? How can I persevere despite
Introducing choice. You're giving yourself a choice that you have more than one reality, that you can actually, you don't have to stay stuck and mired in a particular perspective, that you actually can step back for a moment, look at multiple perspectives, and then realize that they're all interrelated and they don't carry that black or white, do or die kind of ultimatum.
Let's put it this way, I've definitely used my golden key of willingness to open the door of choice and explore around and swim in that pool and blow bubbles and do handstands at the bottom of the pool and all that fun, do cannonballs and splash everyone, all that fun stuff. Then when we realize really the power of our choice,
right,
and how much control and say we have over even what we think, and certainly how we respond and what we transmit, and that ends up becoming some of the most important part of it. Try it. Immerse yourself in negativity. Be around people who are constantly berating you or bemoaning the circumstances of life on earth as they are aware of it, and try the positive. Throw some things out there. Give someone a hug when it's obvious they need it, they're crying out, and see what it does for you.
Well, we of course have friends like you come along because we're inspired by your life, by your extending the legacy of your mother, in fact, and expanding it. Going beyond even the difficulties that she would have had and moving beyond it. We also want to share with our stories this recognition that it's not just a sense of, oh, I hope my life will get better, is that we can have a real sense of involvement, a real sense of awareness in that. In fact, that is what it takes, because why I'd ask you, at first it always sounds like when we've come to these levels of understandings for ourselves, it has become kind of easier for us because we've done some of that initial work. We kind of tend to forget, some of the difficulties we've gone through and the choices we've made and the courage we found in ourselves to look at life differently. Part of why we like sharing these series is to show that this is something anyone can embody, understand. Yes, it does take some effort, but what's contrary is to continue to stay mired in that negativity, or to continue to stay focused on things that are external rather than embodying our own personal power. So we appreciate you being here, and as I thought of with, you mentioned a couple of your brothers, and not to hone on their specific stories, but I would venture guess that of the three siblings, each one took a different path. So each one had really ultimately the same choices, and for whatever perfect reason, you realized that you could choose differently. That you could stay stuck in the what was, or you could say this is what is, that's what was, and here's where I'm going. How would you encourage, based on your experience, to tell the audience, the people that will eventually see this video, encouraging them, inspiring them from that heart of heart, realizing that you've been there, you've done it, and it's worth it. But are there any tools or techniques or things that you can share with our audience that can say, well, these are some of the things I did along the way that moved me from fear to love, from negativity to positive, it's something that our audience would actually be able to say, oh, not only is his story inspiring, now he's also giving me some tips that I can go try out for myself.
Here's what I want to tell your audience. It's all about connection. It really is. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid, the foundation base is about survival, physical needs. And I think we've shown in so many ways that we've lost track of that's maybe not necessarily what we carry as our fundamental primary need that we're pursuing, and that really it's connection. And that we'll stand out in the freezing cold if it's going to give us connection. We'll starve ourselves for days if it's in the name of pursuing a connection. And when we actively pursue that and we reach out for those connections, it's inspiring. It fills our heart. It compensates for all the negativity to which we're exposed. It heals the wounds of having been aware of those things, all the ills of the world, we could call them, and the motives of people who are corrupt or who are selfish to the point of causing harm to others. And there are enough beautiful people out there who care, who get it. There are enough good things happening out there, but we're not always aware of them, and we're not attuned to them. And that connection, that real heart connection, again, just go back to the simple hug, the simple embrace, and the physical connection of humans to really nurture us through that. And that's been a common thread in my history. You call me the love guy. I've always been friendly and social and outgoing, and I understand that there's that big elusive question of nature versus nurture. Is it in my DNA that I was going to be a happy, friendly, happy-go-lucky kid, or did I learn maybe from the affection that my parents gave when we were in a complete home, and the affection that my mother continued to seek out when the home became broken, that I followed in those footsteps? Maybe in my case it's a little of both. Maybe I'll never know how much of it was nature anyway, but the nurture was certainly there. And I love the sweet irony of a broken home being the impetus to seek out more connection, and the finding of that connection is what has really fostered and nurtured my spirit, if you will, to be on a more positive track. I can recall my mother taught at the local community college, and when I was, say 10, 11 years old, I was her little helper, and she taught in the California History Center, and she would send me over to pick up her mail from her mailbox or make copies, and we did all that in an administrative office. And all the ladies who worked in that office knew me, Betty's son. He'd come in over, and I would hug all of them. They all just adored me. And what can I attribute it to aside from just my openness and my willingness to literally and figuratively embrace people and be open with them, and be not be afraid of connection. I mean, if we have a fundamental fear of connection, that can't be a recipe for success in being effective in life, in being confident in life, in nurturing others in life, in inspiring others in life. I'm sometimes a little amazed how people who are quite cruel or abusive tend to attract people, and that people will gravitate towards them. I still haven't really figured that one out, except for the kind of if it bleeds, it leads. Fear is fascinating to us, but I watched a documentary about this monster. He was molesting and abusing everyone in his family, and he's on his deathbed, and they're all surrounding him. You would think those people would be abandoned and shunned, and then I know personally so many of the sweetest people you could imagine, and they're in their elder declining years, alone, housebound, and isolated. And boy, I will promise you, seek out those people, show them some love, give them a tender hand, and watch the miracles happen for yourself.
So in many ways, the as you said, the impetus of broken home, and then of course a bit of a catalyst, a legacy of your mother to show you beauty. In that impetus of a broken home, you actually realized, and I'm kind of stretching it here, but your family became a global family. In other words, everyone on the planet became your family, as opposed to just the nuclear or the micro. And in reality, you realize what didn't work there, you could have just kept it within the family, or within the family unit, or within the extended family unit. But in fact, you decided that, which is really why you're on the path you're on now, and sharing all this wonderful information and the insights and inspiration, is the very thing that you became probably unexpectedly aware of is that, wow, we are one family on this planet. In fact, if I do this with everyone and share this with everyone, all that brokenness will be healed. That you'll extend yourself and carry that legacy forward. Now your family you're not trying to just help your immediate family. You're actually looking in every direction, in every step that you take, every place you go, you're encountering more family to hug, more family you're making that initiative. And that's really what we're sharing here is that, and what you've just said is that it is up to us to make the initiative. It can be, we understand it can be scary to be vulnerable, to be intimate, but what else is there? Lock yourself into a little room, just hide. So if you know somebody that is locked in a little room, maybe it's us that can extend that. And if we are the one that's stuck in a little room, maybe we need to open up the door. In other words, we need to make that connection, that very fundamental connection back to ourselves and each other.
I was giving a talk yesterday on my material, Doing Love, and I talked about surrogate family, and how I've just naturally gravitated toward that in my life. It's interesting how I've done things that have just evolved organically without knowing or intending to do them, but when I look back at them, they make sense, and I realize I've been on this path all along. And so this seeking out of surrogates has been a wonderful experience for me to connect with really good people all over. My father said at one point, actually a former partner of mine said, you can choose your family, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And I said that around my father one time, and he said, well, of course you can choose your family. You grow up when you're 18, and then you're on your own, and then you choose your own family. You partner with whomever, you might have children, whatever it may be. And those perspectives, they're all correct, and they're all not. They're just people's versions of reality, their perceptions. And what you were saying about the global family, I think, takes what I was saying in my talk yesterday about surrogates one step further on that path. Is we are one, we are all family. And it doesn't stop at the humans either.
Right. Absolutely.
We're so deeply intertwined and interconnected with everything in this bubble, I call it the terrarium of our Earth within its atmosphere. And I think that it seems obvious to me that the more we embrace that, understand it, accept it, and embrace it, and live with it as our guiding force, the easier it will be to connect with people. The easier it will be to walk into the nursing home or the bedroom of that isolated person, and the easier it will be for people in that position to do, as you said, the reaching out for connection that they need as well. It's so important, obviously.
So, in your life, I would imagine that you would necessarily credit your awareness as really, literally the awareness. In other words, some aspect of you early on realized that you had to pay attention to your surroundings, your thoughts, your feelings, your outer surroundings, your environment, and somehow be a simultaneous participant and an observer, because that's really where awareness comes from. If all we ever do is simply focus on what's externalized to us, we tend to just think that's all there is. But somehow you had the insight early on to step back and say a relationship was going on with my experience, and I was part of the experience, but I wasn't all of the experience, or I wasn't all of somebody. That's what often happens. We tend to be all of somebody else's experience because we tend to get caught up in dramas. They might be our dramas, they might be somebody else's dramas, but taking that deep breath, taking that pulse, taking that step back, that must have been something that triggered early on in your life, and it must be kind of that background, shall we say, background program that's always running, that you're always kind of being aware. And you said sensitive, you're sensitive to the energies around you, but I think that awareness is such a vital part because it is a broader sense of being. Can you elaborate on you've kind of elaborated on how the awareness has worked in your life, but could you kind of share with our audience how that works for you, being aware of things in relationship to your own thoughts and feelings?
Well, I talk a lot about my training in acting and in screenwriting, storytelling, human behavior, story as a metaphor for life. And in acting, they say acting is reacting. And so it takes active, engaged, attentive listening to be able to respond truthfully in these imaginary circumstances of a scene, of a movie, of a play, whatever it is. And so it's a matter of sensitivity, and it's a matter of paying attention, and it's a matter of getting a read on people. Not just what they're saying, the words themselves, but to look through the words at what was behind them, what was triggering them.
Was it fear? Was it love? Was it negative? Was it positive? You know?
What did they want? How were they trying to make me feel? And why would they want to say what they're saying in an effort to try and make me feel whatever that was that they were after? And so in acting, we call those doings. What are we doing? And of course, why is an even more important question. And as we develop that skill for identifying those things, then we can be more attuned to where people are coming from. And I believe, in my experience, it seems like the more attuned we are to that, the more effective we can be at addressing that, at nurturing them. Especially, people are crying out that we live in an oppressive environment of overload of information, overload of negativity.
Constant busyness.
Busyness, pressure to perform. There's overpopulation, and competition is fierce, and we have limited resources, and we're all vying for our piece of the pie, as it were. And so it becomes challenging to just strip it down to the simple recognition of another human being and what's in their heart, and what are we both doing here, why have we come together, and what do we have the potential to create when the synergy happens of us both firing on all cylinders, and that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, of course, the definition of synergy. And so for me, it's a matter of a more attentive, more attuned recognition of that person and what they're after. And so often, I find we're crying out for not just attention, reassurance, obviously connection, and soothing and healing. And it's easy to get caught up in the story, the complaints, the
reaction,
reaction. Whereas if we can just listen, accept, embrace, very simple questions will come out. Are you looking for comfort or solutions? It's a wonderful cartoon that I saw recently, and someone was angry, and the friend says, are you looking for comfort or solutions? And the person says, well, I want to get angry, and then sad, and then figure some things out, and then giggle, and then go out and have fun. Wow, now that's process.
That's actually making sense of the whole situation, yes.
So I find so often, and I've learned this the hard way myself, people will complain to me about something, and I'll immediately try and help them fix it, reason through it, analyze it, gather data, make determinations about what they really want, give them suggestions of what they might do to get that, when really they just wanted to pour their heart out a little bit and get this off their chest, or connect with another human to help heal the pain that they feel from the fear of what they've experienced.
Just some ability to voice, just to get it out of here, out there. It's not that they're even necessarily always looking for a response. It's just the only way they know how to react.
Venting,
yes.
Yeah.
I had the honor and privilege of sitting in on your presentation yesterday, and one of the, I think one of the most simple yet profound understandings that you brought up, that is something we're aware of too, and I think this is a great way to bring it to kind of a close, is the idea of breath. Because a lot of what we've been talking about, and I think one of the greatest, simplest tools or remembrances, or whatever you'd like to call it, is the breath. And you did such a wonderful job of describing that to the audience yesterday, and the impact and the power. And I would kind of like to, encapsulate it on that, because I feel like with that notion and a little bit of an explanation there, we can leave our audience with, probably the first step. From here on, once they go beyond the video, they can actually say, oh, I can try this, and all of a sudden all the other stuff will come behind it. So elaborate for us today on this power of the breath, as you so wonderfully stated yesterday.
I'd be happy to, of course, Harold. The bottom line, and something I'm sure we can all agree on, is that breath is the source of life. If you want to stay alive, keep breathing, number one. So keep eating, keep sleeping, but keep breathing.
Keep breathing, because without that, you don't have to worry about the eating and sleeping.
Well, I also pointed out this interesting fact that there are a number of involuntary activities going on in our bodies at all time. One of them is circulation, and that happens no matter what. But can we stop our heart from beating with all our intention, musculature? No, it doesn't. I can't. I don't know, and I've never heard of anyone who can or how that technique is. But I can certainly stop my breath. Right, so I have control over my breath. It's something that happens involuntarily. If I don't pay attention, however, I can take control of it voluntarily if I choose and put my intention there. And so this wonderful miracle of breath that's keeping us alive, deep breathing, you can do your research on it scientifically if you like, but you could just take at face value that deep breathing has an innate ability to lower blood pressure and to calm the mind. I'm sure if you look at any meditation technique, they probably include some breathing awareness. And there's a wonderful, Andrew Weil has this technique that he puts out for if you have trouble sleeping. There are the specific breathing type with your tongue behind your teeth. You inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale through the mouth, through pursed lips for a count of 8, and then repeat. And I actually do that sometimes if I find I've got the busy brain and I really want to, it's time to sleep, that it's so powerful and so effective. But at any time of the day, I mean, I say in my technique of doing love, it's a matter of when something crosses our radar of perception and we've gotten the read that, heartbeat of negative reaction to that, that's immediately the wake-up call, the impetus to stop, excuse me, even if you're with, excuse me one second. Okay, and what are we trying to do? What do I want? What's our goal? How can we connect here? So it's such a simple technique that any of us can employ of just take a step back, refocus on the breath. Eckhart Tolle's wonderful work, The Power of Now, he talks about bringing your awareness to that moment when the exhale turns into the inhale. And we're just checking in. Am I alive? Am I breathing? Wait. Boom, that moment of transition to the inhale. And when we check in with that, when we devote our attention to that thing happening, we're no longer paying attention to that thing that caused us the frustration to begin with. It's our little escape, little checker. We do so many things to escape, from entertainment to drugs and alcohol to music to nature, etc., to sex, to all these things we do to escape the brutal realities that we're so aware of in life, especially with media and everything and other negative people. And just to have that one simple way to check out for a second and reset and refocus is a beautiful thing, and it's a simple thing, and it's available to all of us at any time.
I was just saying, at any time, under any circumstance. That's why I love that you brought it up and you explained it so beautifully to the entire audience, because I know it's one of those simple techniques that we've been aware of, and yet most people don't ever think about it. And it is necessarily, I'm sure if some people come across it, they wouldn't think that it would be powerful. But that disconnect is, for that moment, that taking that reset, that breath, really does give us a new perspective. It brings us into a new moment. And now, rather than constantly reacting, or forcing, or, we can come from a different space. And I would say that really kind of brings the whole picture together, because it's saying, we have a choice, our awareness. We can pay attention. We can be more alive, more present, happy. I mean, it's really, these are all choices. We may not have had the legacy of a beautiful mother like you did, who bestowed that, and yet, with or without that, it's simply just stop and go out and look at the sunshine. Stop and look at a rain cloud. It really doesn't matter what it is. There's beauty all around us if that's what we look for. And breath is really probably the breath of life, is really the way that, if you haven't started from anywhere, the breath of life is probably the best place to start, really.
Absolutely. And if I wanted to sort of leave it with one thing, I would say, because you were talking about the forcing, I would say if we could make one choice and one shift in our attention and our intention, would be a shift from forcing to simply allowing. And with that beautiful ending, and that wonderful ending, that inspiring ending,
Evan, it's been a pleasure. We're really honored to have you here today and to share to our Love Begins With Me project. And we thank our audience for listening and look for more of our videos with other interviews also to get inspiration. And I hope we have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, Harold, and much love to everyone watching.